This is the East Central and South Africa Microsoft Excel Forum. The host is Crisp Excel Training and Consulting. We are corporate and individual trainers in advanced Excel, HR analytics, and project management. And we also consult on data management and analytics. Our presenter today is Abdallah Ali. Abdallah Ali is a health informatics expert and a data strategist, a healthcare technology consultant. If you need help in data analytics, implementing electronic health record system, or data governance and privacy, you can see him after this. I'll share his details. You can follow him on LinkedIn. He has very good contribution. You can follow him on Twitter. And you can also follow him on Instagram. I'll share these links with you. And today's topic is creating custom functions.
Okay, so let me introduce you to the Lambda function. Lambda functions allows you to create your own custom function in Excel. Before introduction of Lambda function, the only solution to create a custom function in Excel was to use Microsoft Visual Basic for Application, VBA. So you're required to have the knowledge in programming to create a custom user-defined function. So Microsoft then introduced Lambda function, whereby this is a no-code solution for creating a user-defined function. You know, Microsoft has so many functions, but from time to time, maybe on a few occasions, there is a need for you to create your own function. If that need arises, then Lambda function will be a handy tool for you to use to create your own function. So today I'm going to go through how to create Lambda function and the functions that are associated with Lambda that are called also helper functions that helps Lambda and create a custom function with the use of Lambda helper functions. So I'm going to start with a very simple function called QBroot. To create a QBroot, for example, in Excel, you will have to use, let's say, equals to a number, let's say 1 to the power of 1/3. So the power in Excel is this character, and you write 1/3. So it is this number, for example, A2 raised to the power of 1 divided by 3. So this number raised to the power, this is power means, and this is 1 divided by 3. So it's a number raised to the power reciprocal of 3. So this is a cube root. So press enter. Cube root of 1 is 1. Let me drag this down. So this is a cube root of 2, cube root of 4, and cube root of 12, etc. So if there is a frequent use of this function, for example, I may want to save this function for future use. In order to use it later, I'll have to save it as a Lambda function. So how do you create a Lambda function? To create a Lambda function, you just start with equals to Lambda, equals to Lambda. Then you define the number of parameters that your function will use. For example, the cube root, I only need number, then I will raise it to the power of 1/3. So I'll say I'll need x. So x represents any number that you will accept. Then what do you want to return? The parameter or calculation. So parameter means these variables. So I can use 1 or more, maybe 2 or 3. If I want to use the other, I can say maybe y. It depends. You just put a letter that will represent that number or a parameter. So it can be XYZ, maybe U. So it depends. So for this example, I just want to have only one parameter, x, which will represent a number. Then I want to return the parameter or calculation. My calculation will be x, which represents that number to the power. I put this character, then 1 divided by 3. Okay, so this is my complete lambda function. So when I press enter, I get this curve. Cell contains lambda. So Excel doesn't understand this calculation. So when you're creating lambda, first you need to test lambda with a value. To test lambda with a value, after your lambda function, then you open parentheses, you assign the number, close parentheses, then press enter. So it means that now we have created a lambda function and we have tested with the value of A2. So I can drag this down. So to save a lambda function for future use, you just copy the lambda function up to the end of the lambda function. You exclude the testing value. So it equals to lambda up to the close of the lambda. Copy this one. Then I go to the formulas tab under name manager. I just click new. Then you can write here maybe cube root. This is the name of function that you want to display. And it refers to, I just paste my lambda function. You can see this is a lambda function that we have written. It goes to the refers to, and this is the name, and there is a comment. So for now, let's just say this is complete and click OK. OK. So now, if I want to use the cube root, I can remove this one, delete this column. I can say the cube root, let me use it here. You can say, I just write it like any other function. I say cube root, cube root. You can see now I have my cube root function here. I've been stored. Then I can assign maybe value on up. This one, press enter. So it will calculate the cube root of a number. So I can drag this down. So I get the same values for the cube root of a number. But take, for example, you have the left function. Left function extract the left function, the left value from a string or a character. When you say equals to left, so the lambda function allows you to add this some kind of description of what your function is trying to achieve. So I can go to my lambda. So when you are creating your lambda function, in the name manager, then go again to the formulas tab and the name manager and a comment here. So I have my cube function. I can edit a cube root of a number. So I say OK, close. So now let me delete this. When I try to type cube root again, cube root, you can say now I have this returns. There is a mistake here, but you can see return the cube root of a number. So this tooltip is some description. You just put here and the name manager. Make sure you edit your function and a comment here. So this is a comment. So comment is what is appearing here as a tooltip. Okay, so let us go to is omitted. This is the first lambda helper function. The helper function is something that aids you in writing your lambda function. So I want to create a root of a number, and we created first the cube root. So I want this to be dynamic, whereby you can decide where you want cube root, square root, maybe fourth root or fifth root of a number. So it's up to you to choose. So creating a lambda function of that kind, whereby you have the choice of deciding which value to put in a parameter, which is how many Excel functions work. You use the following. So I can just create my lambda function here called a root. So I can say equals to lambda. Lambda requires two values. I now want a value and the number which will be a root. So I want X and Y. And you can call these variables any data. You can say a number, another variable called root. So you can say comma. So what is the calculation that you want this function to return? So I want raised to the power this one and 1 divided by root. So it will be a number to the power of an inverse of a root. So it will be like when the root is 3, it will be a cube root. When it is 2, it will be a square root, etc. So this is calculation that I want. So I can test this with 1 and root maybe 3. Okay, I get 1. And this, remember, is a cube root like the other function we created. So I can drag this down. So we get a cube root of a number. If we want square root, we can change this root to 2. Press enter. So this will be the square root of a number. So sometimes you want the number to default. You want a certain value to be the default. Like when you're creating maybe a left function. A left function, you can see, requires you to put a text and the number of characters that you want from the left of this text. You can see the numcars. When you see this brace sign, it means this is optional. For example, I can say, let me go to so when I say equals to left of this, I want to return 2 characters from left. I can write 2. So it return AB and this one ACR. So sometimes I want to return 3 characters. So you can say 3, drag down 3. What happens if I don't put this numcar? So I can remove this numcar. Press enter. You can see the default is 1. It means that if you don't put the number of characters, it default to 1. So in this, is omitted allows you to do similar like this. It allows you to define the default value. So what you're doing, you can say this root, you just put with brace, the root with brace. So I can say here, what I want to return, I want to return the number to the power of 1 divided by. So here I can write my if function. If is omitted, if it is omitted, what is omitted? The root. If the root is omitted, then the value should be 2. Otherwise, the root. This might seem confusing because I created a function called the root. So let me say root, or let me change the number. Let me use num and say RT for root. So this is num, and if it is omitted, RT, which is a root, can say use 2, otherwise use the root RT. Close parenthesis for the if, close parenthesis for the 1 divided by this if. So what I'm saying here is, if the root is omitted, then assume the value of 2. If is omitted, which one is omitted? If RT is omitted, assume the value to be 2. Otherwise, use the one that has been typed, the RT that has been typed. Then close the num raised to the power of this and close the lambda. So I need to test here. Then just open parentheses. I can test with this one, comma, maybe 2. Enter. So this would be the square root, right? If I say 3, this would be the cube root. If I say 4, so it will be a fourth root. What if I don't put anything here? Oh, sorry. I wanted to type 4. Excuse me. Type 4. So here, double click the fourth root. So if I don't put anything here, enter. What does it mean? Let me test my lambda, copy, or I can use the default, the built-in function called square root, sqrt, of this number. You can see the number as the same. So this calculation means the square root, even though we haven't put here 2, but it has defaulted using the is omitted function. If RT is omitted, use 2, otherwise use the number that's been entered. So that's how you can use the is omitted function to make a parameter default in Lambda function. So I can copy this function as we have discussed. I can copy this one, exclude this testing value. So I can copy all the way from the equal up to the close of the parenthesis of lambda. Now, copy. Then come to name manager, new, then let me call it root. Put my lambda here. Can say the comment return the root of a number. Say okay. The name already exists. Excuse me. Let me remove this one. Can remove all these functions. Can delete them. Okay. And create my new function called root. And paste my lambda here. And say returns the root of a number. Okay. Close. So I can just use it like a normal other function and put here equals to root. So now you can see I have a num and RT, and you can see this is optional. So I can say either this number raised to the power of 3, which is cube root. If I want the square root, I can say equals to root without putting, I put this is the number and it is mandatory, and RT is optional. So by default, it will assume the value 2 using the is omitted function. Okay, so let us go by row. Sometimes you can do calculation row by row basis. For example, if you want to get the sum of the cells by month, by each sales person. So for example, this is Abdallah. I want to get the total sum here. Normally, you can use a sum function. You can say equal to the sum of this. Let's enter. You can drag this down. If you want to write a single function that speeds, take advantage of Microsoft Excel for Office 365. When I try to write some function, maybe sum of all this, with expectation that it will spell row by row. So I say sum. Unfortunately, it just aggregates. Sum is an aggregator. It's just give me the sum of all these values. If I highlight this, you can see the sum of 3,594, which is equivalent to this one. So if I want my formula to spill and get the sum on row basis, the solution is to create a lambda function using a helper function called by row. So I want to get to perform my calculation on row basis. So I can say you start by saying is equal to by row applies. If you write by row, it says applies a lambda function to each row and return an array with that. So by row, I can highlight all these values. Then what I need to say is lambda, define your lambda function. And what I want x and return the sum of x. So to explain this, to understand this, so I need only a single variable called x. Then I want to return the sum of x. So this x does not represent, for example, 151, 273. This x represents a row. You're saying by row. So for this array of values that I've selected, go on row basis. So x is the row. So for the first row, it will take all the values from x will represent all the value from 151 up to 104. Then it will sum them. So this x is not a single value, it's an array of values in a row. So when I press enter, yeah, I'm missing closing parentheses, close parentheses, press enter. So you can see the first row, the sum of the first row is 697. The sum of the last row is 700. If I come here down, 708. So to perform this kind of calculation, you want your form to spill down and perform computation on row basis, use by row function. So there is a similar function called by call. So you say equals to by call. I highlight the entire array of values, and then I define my lambda function. As you can see, if you write by call, it says function. This function is a lambda function, not just any other function. So I can say the lambda of x. So now x represents values in a column. So under this selection, I have 4 columns. The first column is 151 up to 130. And the second column is 273 up to 156. So this x does not represent just a single value. Every value in this selection, it represents a column. By saying by call and selecting an array, you are saying x is a column. So which calculation you want to perform in an entire column? I want to sum those values in a column. So you can say sum of x. Close parenthesis for the sum, close parenthesis for the lambda, close parenthesis for the by call, press enter. So you have your total value that is fills all the way and gives you the values, the sum for each column. So for this column, you can see it's 819 and equivalent to this one. Okay. So some people use by practice, you can put any variable for this. So some people prefer to use equals to by call. They will select here and say lambda call represented by C. They can say C then sum of C. Or some people may write call sum call. So it doesn't matter, any variable you can choose, but it will give you the same value. So you can just, this one, if you try to be more descriptive, you can just write a variable that says something, that speaks something like call, or row, you can say row, R-O-W. And the good thing or the good practice is try to avoid the function. For example, the row, there is a row function. So it is better to avoid using the row because there is a row function. If you come here, there is equals to row. There is function called row. So when you are defining a variable, remember to not put a row function. So curl enter. So this is by row and by call. We perform computation by row and by call respectively. So let us come to the map function. Okay, so let me create a very simple use this one. Let me do map on this one first. Then you go to the other examples. Copy, paste here. Okay. So I want to calculate the cube root. So I can say equals to map. What does map do? It say returns an array formed by mapping each value in an array to a new value by applying a lambda. So you have an array. For example, I can select is equal to map this array of values. So I want to apply lambda to each value. So I can use a map function. So I can say, comma, lambda x returns the cube root of x. So x to the power of 1 divided by 3. Okay, close parentheses for the lambda, close for the map. Enter. So now I have the cube root of all these values still be using the map function. So this one corresponds to the cube root of this, and this one corresponds to the cube root of this. So you have a range of values. If you want to apply the same function to all the values, and then you use the map function. And even if I have like number, this number, maybe let me image this one. So I have number in multiple columns. This is 13, 14, double click and send down. So I can say equals to map this array, comma, lambda x returns x to the power 1 divided by 3. Close parentheses, close for the lambda, close for the map. So you can see, so this is a cube root of 1, and this is a cube root of 13. So what is standing here is 12 by 2 values. So this is 12 by 2, and the value stand here is 12 by 2. This one corresponds to the cube root of this, and this one corresponds to the cube root of this. So this is different from what we discussed using the by row. By row, it means the x represents all values in a single row. So when you use map function, it means that you are mapping each of these. So it needs to be, you need to make sure that map can work. Sometimes map can work on a row basis, like by row, but sometimes if you have more than one dimension, like this one, you need to use the map function if you want to apply in all of this. If you use by row, it means you apply the same thing by row, which will be a bit confusing. So let us go to the example. In this example, I have the names whereby the first letter of each name is capitalized, but there is no spaces here. So I want to split this by using this capital. When there is a capital letter, I want to split to have a space before the capital letter. So here I can use by row, or I can use map function. So let me try to clear this one. So let me try to explain this a little bit. As you can see, this information are arranged by row. So here I can use by row function, but also these are a single column, and my computation want to compute for each element to return a corrected name. So I can either choose to use by row, or I can either choose to use map function, because the dimension is the single dimension, which is column wise. We have 10 rows. How many? We have 9 rows that I need to do computation in a single column. So I can either use map or by row. So let me start to see how I can do this. So to do it on maybe on one cell, I can just say equals to concatenate. So before that, let me explain one thing, one trick that I want to use here. There is a function called exact, equals to exact. I want to use exact function. It checks whether two text strings are exactly the same and return true or false if or false. Exact is case sensitive. So if I say exact letter B and letter B, so I can say it returns true When I say B and capital letter B, it returns false. So this trick is what I'm going to do. So I can use, yeah, let me write here exact. Another thing I want to use the Midi function. And the other function I want to use the sequence function. Okay, so for the Midi function, I want to split this in every character. So J, U, L, all the way up to last E to be in the separate cell. So to do that, you can use the Midi function. There is no single function to use that is direct. And I've seen many people telling Microsoft, proposing that Microsoft add a function to do this. But for the meantime, we use a combination of length function and mid and sequence. Length function returns the length. I can say the length of this one. See, the length is 22. It means the number of characters is 22. So the sequence function returns the numbers in sequence. Let me use this 22. All right, I want sequence, sequence, H2. You can see it returns the number from 1 up to 22. So I can use this combination with the mid to get these, to split these characters. So what I'm going to do is write equals to mid. I want the mid of this text, comma, start num. I want to start with this sequence function with the length of character or length of this text. For this, you will return, maybe for this example, return 22. So I want the sequence of 22, so numbers from 1 up to 22. And the number of character I want to return from this is 1. So what this is going to do is going to take this one and extract one character. Starting point is 1, then 1 character, then goes to 2, starting point 2, 1 character. So I get J, get U, L, I. So let's enter. You can see I'll split this my text. Okay. So I can say equals to lambda. So let me try to use concatenate this. I will concatenate. So I say if so each this one sequence length of this one, comma 1. What is this? These are the characters split from this. So every character in this letter. So if this one here with exact, say when this exact of this one and the upper of the same, copy and paste here. B. So if this is true, it means that if you split this one, you take this value and then you take the uppercase of the same letter, it is the same. It means that one is in uppercase letter. So I want that number, I want that character to start with space and concatenate with that character. Otherwise, excuse me, mid of this one, the upper of this mid, comma. Let me restart this one. Let me copy this one, the mid, and use this one equals to if exact function of this character, and when I take the upper of this, close upper, close exact. If this is true, then I want to return the space concatenate with that character. Otherwise, I will return that character. Okay. So let me concatenate this output. Okay, so you can see, let me try to explain it again. So what I'm doing here, for every character, this one, I've split this using this Midi function. This is straightforward. You just say mid of this text. You apply the sequence function to the length of this text. If the length is 22, it means it will get a sequence from 1 up to 22. So when taking a mid of the text from the sequence, it means you are getting every element. And we have said the number of characters we want is 1. So we are extracting 1 character from every position. So this will return 22 position. So position 1, we take J, we take 1 character. At position 1, which will be J. At position 2, we take U. At position 3, we take L, etc. So what I'm testing here, if every character, when I take an exact function with its upper, when I use the uppercase letter of that text, is the same. When this exact return true, it means that that character is in alpha, it is in uppercase. If it is in uppercase, what I want to do is take that letter and add space before. So concatenate space with that letter. Otherwise, just put that letter as it is. So at the end of the day, I join all the letters after this kind of transformation. You can see I get this. And since J it is also a capital letter, this very first letter is in capital letter, then you can see there is a space at the beginning here. So we can remove this space using the trim function. You can say it's equal to trim. Close, then remove this. So I can drag this down, right? Sorry, excuse me. Just come up to here. So you get every letter has been split by the uppercase letter with a space. So with this in mind, I can just either use map or use by row to do what? And say either map of this one, entire range of values. I can map each element. So with the map function, it tells do on each cell. So map applies on each cell. So when each cell, do this one. Use a lambda function, lambda of value x, which represents a cell, and do all this calculation trim. So what is changing when you apply a lambda function? So each cell represents the selection of a cell. So for example, here we did on A2. So when applying the lambda, this x represents this A2. So you remove all these reference to A2 and replace with x. So I say x, 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 okay, x. Here, close the parentheses, closing, so you can see it spills to the nearing neighboring cells. And you can see what we have done here. There is a lot of duplication. We have duplicated very long function here, mid. This one first, second, third, and fourth. When you are writing a function and there is a duplication, then you need to lose a let function. So we'll see the let function after this. Yeah. So let us go to the scan. What scan is doing is just iterating on number of cells and return a cumulative value after applying the lambda on each cell. So for example, when you can say equal to scan, it says scans an array by applying a lambda function to each value and return an array that has each intermediate value. So because this returns an intermediate values, we can take advantage of the scan to return, for example, the so-called running total. Previously in Excel, you write like this, equals to sum, click this one, then you say F4 to lock it. Then up to the same cell. Enter. Okay. So we started from B2 exactly up to, we start from the B2. Might look confusing, but we are just starting on the same cell. So you are summing the same cell. But as you can see, this one is open for change. It is a relative reference. Enter. So we drag this down. You can see, so now this one sums these two cells. This one sums these three cells, but it is always beginning with B2 because we have locked it. So this running total, we can create this with easy using the scan function. We can say is equal to the scan. Scan requires you to put the initial value. So you can start, you can say, I want to start from 0, comma, then array of values. My values are these, all these cells values, which create an array of cells. Okay, so I'm applying a lambda function. You can say lambda, and something should guide you. As you can see, we have two values here. We have an input of 0 and also these array of values. So we have two parameters here. So in your lambda function, you need to say something like x comma y or any variable names of your choice. So I want to return sum of x or y. You can see. So you see there is an x here, which is the starting, also called the accumulator. There is an array of cells. So what you want, given these two values, x and y, return the sum of x and y. So with the scan function, you start with 0, then 0 sums with b2, then you go 0 sums with b2 become x, then you add with y. With y is another cell. Y represents the array of cells. So when it is b3, it will take 0, add b2, and add b3. So it will increment and give you a running total. So you can use this function called scan to give you a running total like this, or any other calculation that you think you want to see the intermediate values. So that is the scan function. Let's come to reduce function. With the same function, with the same example that we saw here under map function, I can use the reduce function. I will say equals to reduce. So I need to have, reduce. I need to have my initial value and array of function. So for this example, I want to substitute. Whenever I see a capital letter, I want to substitute the capital letter with a space and capital letter. So I start with this text. This is my initial value. What is my array? My array, I want to split this to get the individual characters in this text. So I'll use the same technique called mid. As you can see, this is very useful, and we need Microsoft to have a single function to do this. Text of this, comma sequence, the length of this, the mid. I want to extract one character in each iteration. So comma, so I have two parameters here, A2, which is the initial value. I have my array here. When I highlight this, you can see JULISE, which is every single character here that has been split into its own. So I use a lambda. What guides me to know how many variables should I use here? With the reduce function, you have two. So we have this initial value, then we have this array. So you say x, comma y, and mind you that this y represents an array in this. So your calculation is, I use if exact y and upper y. Yeah. If y is equal to when y is in capital letter. If it is equal, it means y it is in capital letter. So what I want to do is to substitute x with space and y, concatenate with y, substitute x, odd x, sorry. I want to substitute y. So when y is seen and y it is in uppercase, so I want to substitute. A substitute function takes a text. Our text is x, which is as starting point, we say a2, which our text. Then all the text is y, which is an uppercase, substitute with space joined by y, and instance num. If you don't put anything in with instance num, it means you substitute every occasion of uppercase letter of I, which is what you want. This one here. Otherwise, we don't substitute anything. But it's okay. Close if, close lambda, close reduce. So you can see this one. As per previous example, also this J is in capital letter, the very first letter is in capital. So you can just trim this function to get the final. Press enter, you get this one. So if you want, you can drag this down. And because you have an Excel for Microsoft 365, which has a spill behavior, we can take advantage of spilling. So what can we do here? We can apply a map, because this is a single cell, but it's only one dimension. We can apply here by row, or we can also apply a map. So let me apply it first by row. By row of every row here, but a row contains a single cell. Then say lambda, let me use another variable. Let's say lambda v returns. So any reference to A2, you put v. So I can say v. So right, A2, you put v. 2, put v. Close lambda, close by row, press enter. So we get this one. So that is the reduce function. It accumulates the value. So we are substituting and concatenate, substituting and concatenate. So let us go to the make array. Make array function, you say is equal to make array. Make array. You define how many rows you want. So I want to create a multiplication table, which is 12 by 12 dimension. So I want 12 rows and 12 columns. Function is lambda of x comma y. What I want is x times y. Press enter. So you can see this one. If it is 1 and 1, it's 1 times 1, get 1. 2 by 2, 2 times 2, get 2, get 4. 3, you get 6, 3 by 2, 6. So this is one of examples, and you can use make array. So you can think of example that you may need this function make array. Okay. So let us come to the very last function called let. This is not a lambda function, but it helps much when creating your lambda functions. Let us go to the map function, the formula that we used here. We had a lot of duplication here with the Midi function. So let us try to use let function and see the output. So let me delete this one and say equals to let. So let function allows you to define variables and calculation that holds. The variable that holds a certain calculation. So the variable names is your choice. You can say it's equal to let. Maybe let me say I want variable 1 called A. This A will hold this text. So the second variable is B, you put comma. So it's a pair of variable and value. Variable and value. If you are satisfied with variable value pair, then you can finalize by putting calculations. But if you put a variable, it has to put a name value that carries that variable. that is carried by that variable. Then lastly, you put the calculation. So B carries what? I want to split mid sequence. Len of A2, I can say len of A2 or len of A, because I've already said that A2 is A, so I can either use A2, but as long as I've already defined A2 in variable A, I can say len of A, comma 1. Excuse me, so this mid is mid of A, comma 1. So if I want, I can just check. The advantage of let, you can just check if this calculation is okay. Let me just return this B and see the output. So I can say B, it means variable B is carrying this calculation, and I want B to be returned. So I can say B. So I can see directly here what is B. So B here. The advantage of let, not only B, I can also say what is A. So A is this one here. So I can just, this is good for debugging. You can see as you are creating your function, you can see the value that each step is carrying. So now we have this one, and we said if exact, you remember this exact of A comma upper of A. So you can see now, instead of using this very large mid of this, we have already said B, so it is B, excuse me. So if exact of B is the same as upper of B, then I want this to be space concatenate with that B, otherwise I want that B. Okay, so with this if function, I can concatenate. Concat. Close, press enter. Yes. So you can see this one. I can also say after concatenating, I need to trim. Add here, close parentheses, press enter. So you can see now the formula is very small because we have defined this B to be the mid of this very long. So now we can use inside our if, instead of putting this very long function, we just say B, which is referring to this mid of this and blah blah. If B is the same as upper, then that character is in uppercase. That's why when we take the uppercase, it is equal to that letter. So it means that letter is already in uppercase. If that letter is already in uppercase, we want to change that letter to start with the space and concatenate with B. Otherwise, just leave B as it is. In the end, concat, join all the text after this transformation. And remove the leading spaces, use trim function to get this one. So I can just see if this is okay. This is for a single character. To apply it for this entire cells, I can just use map or a by row. I can say by row of all these. So technique is here is to say lambda of maybe X, and for every reference of A2, which we took as an example, you replace with X, your new variable. So X, then close parentheses, close lambda, close by row, press enter. I can just change this by row into map. Okay, press enter. It will give me the same value. Okay, so the last thing that I would like to mention is there is a very handy function called chords, equals to chord. Let's say chord of text. Let me put here first escape. Erase everything. Say character code form. Let me say there is uppercase A, uppercase Z, small case A, small case Z, number 0, number 9. I can use the code function equals to code. This one. I get code 65. And car equals to car. The character of this code, it will return me the character. So this is very, very important when referring to this. So I can change this one, for example, and say, remove this one. Let me add another here. I can use the chord function to check for the code. If the code is uppercase, so uppercase letter code starts with 65 up to 90, right? So I can say, let me try to use equals to red. And this one is split. Split as a each sequence line of F, then comma 1. Okay, let me return B first and see. So my formula works perfectly. So I can say if and the I use end function code of B is greater than or equal to. For the uppercase, it starts with 65 up to 90. Greater than or equal to 65. And the code of B is less than or equal to 90. If this is true, then as we did for the exact function, I take the B, I take space first, I concatenate with B, otherwise just get B. Then concatenate the entire output. See, excuse me. If and code of B is greater than or equal to 65, and code of B is less than or equal to 90, then I take space and join with B. Otherwise, I take I take 65. Okay. Otherwise, take this one. So if I join this, code of B 65 and equal inclusive, which means this is capital letter. Then I replace this one or this one. So let me escape this one. I will recheck this one maybe using reduce. Let us try with reduce maybe. Don't know why this is not working. I can say equals reduce this one from a image midi of A2, comma sequence, len of A2, comma lambda of X, comma Y. If and coach of Y greater than or equals to 65, comma code of Y less than or equal to 90. If this is true, substitute X with space joined by Y. Otherwise, X close substitute close if close each. Excuse me, mid should be 1. Mid, comma 1. Yeah, okay. It's okay. Let me press enter. Opening close parentheses. Sorry. If this one code and this one, we substitute X, substitute with all the text Y, sorry. I'm substituting Y with this one, close, otherwise this one. So ring, substitute X with old text Y, then substitute new text space and Y. Substitute all instances. Otherwise, if this is true, then use this one. Otherwise, this one here. Okay. Say comma, value false, then X. So I close if, I close lambda, I close reduce. Yes. So I need also to trim this one. I can trim this reduce. Then after this, I want to apply entire, then I can say map or by row, map of every cell here with a lambda function. Map with a lambda, maybe use a variable. Because I've already used a variable X and Y, I can just change use variable V. But this V will represent this value that we just selected for the cells A2. So say V, V, V. Close lambda, close map. I've left one here, A10. So I can change here A10. Press enter. Then you get this list. So I think that's marked the end of our webinar today. In case anyone has a question, then you can ask.
That was a very insightful session. You had another example in the late worksheet. If you go to the late worksheet, there was an example that you had about removing characters.
Yeah, I had this. Should I proceed with this one?
Yeah, you can. I think that's a common issue that people face. So you can show us on how to use the let function on that.
Okay. So for example, for this one, I want to remove numbers. Say equals to let. Maybe variable A represents this entire text. Comma, variable B, as usual, mid, right? Mid, A, sequence length of A. And people need Microsoft to define this function because it's very useful. Solves a lot of problems. So now I can say, let me check for the B. So B is, this one has been split. Okay. With that, I can say, so I want numbers to be removed. Okay. So I can say, if for example, this one, I can concatenate this one. Maybe I can test if it is a number by converting. As you know, if you are splitting, when you are splitting, it returns a text. Escape. So everyone here is a text. Even if it is a number, it is a text. Okay. So if it is a number, it is a text, but we can convert every text to be a number by just multiplying maybe by 1 here. I can multiply by 1. Okay. You see? So number now has been converted into text. Okay. So, or maybe I can just put double dashes here. Double dashes. See the same thing? Okay. So let me go to define my if. So with this example, I can say if, okay, is error dash B. Okay. If B is, if I precede B with double dashes, means I want to convert B into numbers. If it gives me an error, it means it is a text. So I want that B. Okay. Otherwise, just I want a blank, nothing. Okay. So this is how I want to define every. So for every character after splitting, I want to check if it gives me an error. So let me use an error is error. This capture all errors. Is error doesn't capture all errors. So let me use is error. So if I convert a character into number, it gives me an error. It means it is not a number, it is a text. Then I want that number. Otherwise, that number should be replaced with nothing. So after this, I will concatenate. Yeah. You can see you are concatenating all characters that gives a number when you try to convert, that gives an error when you try to convert into a number. Okay, so it means all characters that are letters maybe are numbers, they will give an error when you try to convert, as we have seen here. So if it gives me an error, then I want to take that character. That's the character that I want, because I want to remove numbers. Otherwise, if it is a number, it doesn't give me an error, that number should be replaced with nothing. So by doing this, I've removed all numbers. If I concatenate, I get all text without numbers. Okay, so as usual, Ctrl Z, I can say map all this, comma, lambda of x, comma, what I want, the function, this one should execute on x. So A2 becomes x, close my lambda, close my map. See, I can get all the characters in this. So maybe remove alphabets. I mean, remove A, B, C. So it's very simple. I can use the same. Then copy and paste here. Just change. If I convert into a number, it's an error. Then I want to be. Then if that is not, it's not a number, then it should be blank. Otherwise, yes, I change it to be B. So it means I get those numbers. Yeah. I can also use the reduce function. Maybe reduce, or remove number with reduce, maybe copy. This is the final example, maybe. As the time is not on our side. So let me use reduce to remove all characters. And say equals to, let's, or maybe start with reduce. Reduce, my initial value is this character. Then my array is after splitting this character. So A2, comma sequence, length of A2, close parenthesis for the sequence, put 1 for the me, return 1 character. So I have this in my initial value. I have this array of character, which is, you can see A, B, C, D, E, 1. So single character for each of these. So I want to apply my lambda function, lambda x, comma y. What guides me to know that there is x, comma y, or two variables? Because of the reduce function requires you fed parameter for initial value, the second for an array and a function. So a function should contain these two. Then I say comma. Then which kind of calculation I want to perform? I want to substitute. Okay, I will use the exact, or maybe use code. So let me use the simplest one, which is exact. If exact, I'm playing with these letters, and these are represented by y. So if y, it is exact with upper y, it means that is an upper letter. Okay, if this is true, then substitute x, which is represented by this one value. I'm substituting x, my old text being y. Now I want a space with y. Okay, close substitute. Then this is value if it is true. Otherwise, if it is not true, you don't substitute, you put it x as it is. Close an if, close a lambda, close reduce. Let's enter. Sorry. And ABC, sorry, excuse me. If it is exact y and upper y, substitute x with y, substitute all the text y, substitute with this one. Otherwise, if it is upper, then you substitute with y. Otherwise, you substitute with y without space. All right. Substitute with y without space. Substitute x with y. Yeah. Let's try this one. Enter. Sorry. Comma. Value false. Substitute. So this is for the lambda, and this is for the reduce. That's right. Excuse me. And then we come again. If exact y and upper y, if y is a capital letter, then substitute x. Substitute with y. So we substitute all text y with a space joined by y. Otherwise, okay, let me leave this one. I'll figure out why this is not working, but should have been working. Value false, you don't substitute. Let me try value when this is not a uppercase, you don't substitute. Try this one. When y is upper. Oh, sorry, this is very different example. Okay, this is not about splitting the upper, so I was just taking this example. So what I want here to remove numbers. So when this is, so I need to use another function here. When it is number, excuse me, when it is number y, and it's not y, I need to convert this into a number. When it's number, then substitute this one. You substitute with space. Otherwise, you don't substitute. So when y is converted into a number, and remember y is every character here, which has been split. When this y, if you can try to convert it to a number, it gives you a number. So substitute that y with nothing. So I need to substitute with nothing. Otherwise, just leave x as it is. Okay. Substitute when this is number. Substitute with x. Sorry, remove this y. So when this is a number, it means this is the number. Then remove that number by substituting the number with nothing. Otherwise, leave x as it is. Okay, this is going to work. Okay, this one. So, and if you want to spill it to neighboring cells, you can say after reduce, we say lambda of v maybe, sorry, lambda of this range. Sorry, we say map. We are mapping or by row, map this range by applying a lambda function, lambda maybe of v, then reduce a reference of A2, you replace with this variable v, close your lambda, close your map, press enter. Okay, so you can do the same. And when I want to just alphabet, the same function, I can use the same technique. When I want only alphabets, I can say when is error. If I try to convert a character into a number by applying these double dashes, it gives an error. So when is error? When is error? When is error? This conversion returns an error. Then I need to substitute that character that when converted into a number returns an error. I want to substitute with nothing. Otherwise, I leave it in great. So you can see I return numbers. Yeah. So this is how you can do the reduce. And this you can use this with concat. I think that's we have exposed.
I think I've enjoyed the session. I like when you are working through the function. it helps me to understand, and I hope the participants have also been able to understand. If you want to ask a question, you can write it on the comment, or you can raise a question, or you can raise your hand. I'll unmute you. Anyone with a question? Okay, as they think of a question, what my question is, how did you come to master all these functions in Excel? What method did you use to know all this?
Okay, so first and foremost, I just went to YouTube, watch a lot of videos there, tutorial from YouTube, from some of the channels, like Excel is fun, and one from, there is a one popular woman called, I've forgotten the name.
Leila?
I think this know that, Leila Garani, yes.
Yes.
So I watch their videos, and the one that makes me master most of this is to do those the so-called challenges from Excel BI.
Yes.
So if you want to master the same, you can just see. It's quite different. The way I started, it was taking a lot of time and a lot of effort, maybe a combination maybe of 20 functions to get an answer from those challenges. But now I can use like 2, 4, 5, 6 functions and to arrive to the answer. So my solutions becomes very smaller day and day. So those attending those challenges from Excel BI has helped me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, those challenges actually they are very enlightening, and
Yes.
I would like to encourage anyone in attendance today, if you are on LinkedIn, try the challenges by Excel BI. There's a new guy giving challenges. I can't remember his name, Kumal somebody. So the more you try, I think, follow Abdallah on Twitter, follow him on LinkedIn. The challenges, and see you next time. So bye.
Bye.